Welcome to the Quilt Shop Podcast, where we talk with quilt and sewing retailers from all across the country about the challenges of running their business and how they succeed. I'm your host, Spencer Wright. Hi, everyone, and welcome. We've got Susan Hyder here from Hyderhangout in Cleveland, Tennessee. How are you doing, Susan?
I'm doing wonderful. Weather's wonderful, and I hope you're doing good over there.
Yeah, we're doing awesome here. We're over here in Utah, so also getting a little bit warmer, but kind of nice to have those summer months coming up.
Yeah.
Well, Susan, I think we just kind of want to get into it as far as talking a little bit about you and your shop. How we got here. So I know that kind of some of the origins were maybe an eBay shop in 2007-ish. Tell us about how you got here to having Hyderhangout and. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Well, 2007-ish. I had eBay sales a little bit before that, but 2007, I actually had a whole bunch of fabric that I bought from a store that went out of business, and I put it on eBay. 2008, I quit working as a nurse. Yay. I was a burnout nurse, so, I didn't want to go back to work, and what's happened over the last few 20 years, 15 years is I'm glad.
Sure.
And then 2008, I actually opened a business in my basement. I had one of them big, huge, lighted, 5-foot by 8-foot lighted signs, and I had hours put on it, but people still were afraid to come in because they were afraid they were going to interrupt. We have a small farm, so they were afraid they were going to interrupt the small farm.
Sure.
But I sat in the store that we set up in my basement those hours, and I had a little bit of sales, but about October of 2009, I decided, we're going to go somewhere else, and I just kind of fell into a place downtown Cleveland, and it was an experience because we went from November of 2009 to November of 2010, and we had one of those landlords, and we'll just leave it at that. We won't say the names.
Sure. I totally get it.
I had a few times I went in to my business and there was no electricity or no water. It was interesting. Yeah. So when it came for the lease to be renewed, we prayed about it and said, we got to find somewhere. And I found this place that I'm at now.
Okay.
And I actually got here about an hour before somebody else was going to gave a deposit. And then over the weekend, I called all my friends, said, we're moving down the street. I wish I had a video of it because it would have been really neat because people were just pushing carts down the street, throwing stuff in their cars, driving down. And it's a 3,000 square foot building.
Okay.
And we went from a 600 square foot to 3,000. So we put up curtains and stuff, and then we slowly built shelves and built walls and expanded. And then about a year ago, we have expanded all the way to the back door. So now we have 2 entrances. And that's how I got to 2022, but a lot of growth in between. I also did a now defunct website, and I can't even remember the name of it, but it was such a bad company, they ended up with a lot of lawsuits and stuff against them, and they were, I'm not even going to name it, I just thought of it, but I'm not going to name it, but they were not what they promised, and they kept going up on their price like monthly, and I don't even remember how I found you guys. It was not at market, but it was something maybe emailed or something because I didn't meet you guys until St. Louis market, like face to face.
Yeah.
But in 2009, I think it's 2009, I went with you guys. I'm number 438, and you guys got over 10,000 customers now. So when I call in and they ask me my number, I go, oh, it's 438. And they go, oh, you've been here longer than me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. You're an original on the Like Sew system,
Yeah.
and we love and appreciate that. So tell us a little bit more. I guess looks like you've gone through a lot in trying to start Hyderhangout, right? Through e-commerce, different locations, and some pretty crazy growth. Tell us where the passion for quilting comes from. Like
Oh,
where did that begin? How did you even say, yeah, I have a passion for quilting and selling quilt supplies and,
oh
and
boy.
engaging the customers in that
So
way?
you want to know my whole life story? Um,
Just a little bit about your
well,
passion for
when I was
quilting.
6 years old, I started hand sewing, and by the time I was 10, I had a Barbie doll that had 500 hand sewn outfits.
Okay, so it really is a life passion.
Yes, and then when I was 12, I was somewhat of a geek. Actually, I think I was a really bad geek when I was in high school. I mean, I was in Latin club and honor society president. But my grandmother from Costa Rica, step grandmother, taught me how to make a quilt when I was 12. And sad thing is, we made the top, and the next day we were going to get up and quilt it. But for me, fabric, which is somewhat fluid, wasn't perfect enough, and my seams didn't match. I got up in the middle of the night, cut it all up into a million pieces, and threw it away. I wish for other beginning quilters I still had my beginning quilt,
Sure.
but that was my first. Of course, I like creating, and to me, quilting is an art, and so that's kind of my art. I've done a little bit of music, and I've done a little bit of drawing and a little bit of painting and other crafts, but quilting has been an art. When I was in high school, I did work for a doctor in his laboratory, and then I graduated from high school, went off to college in Springfield, Missouri, and dropped out of college to get married. And we'll just say this right now, I'm on my fourth marriage, and we've had ups and downs, and
Sure. Totally get it.
we'll get a book written, and it'll be interesting anyway. So,
I can't wait.
so when I was married to my first husband, we decided I'd stay home. So I did alterations. I did, that was back in the 70s when you had the leisure suits with the plaid yokes.
Sure.
I'm sure that's way before your.
It's pre my era, but I know what you're referring
You've
to.
seen pictures probably.
I have.
And I would make him.
do.
He and I would have matching outfits, and I did. I've a lot of self-taught, but actually, when I was 18, I went to work at Fine's department store in Savannah, Georgia, and for 5 years did alterations, and I was one of about 18 alteration girls. I was the youngest, and we had all kinds of girls that taught me everything they knew, all the way up to we had an 82-year-old that was doing the bridal beading. So I think I've done a little bit of all kinds of sewing,
Yeah.
but the art part of quilting is what I liked. Had my own factory in Florida for a while, small quantity garment manufacturing with a screen print component. And I'm trying to think. And then I've been doing quilting until now. And like I said, in 2008, and I also, I went to school, became a nurse, but I think some of the skills are across the same skills you use in nursing or healthcare, you're using in quilting, and it's also a stress relief. So I think there's a lot of quilters that are nurses or, healthcare professionals. I've found that.
There's some crossover there.
Yeah. And so then, did that answer your question? How I passion-wise, quilt-wise?
It does. I think the answer to that is it's been a lifelong passion for you, right? That you have really been around the sewing, quilting, crafting kind of space for so long that it just came natural to you to kind of open up a shop later on, in that 2007, 2008 era, and kind of gone from there. So I am curious, as far as kind of setting your shop apart, setting Hyder Hangout. What makes your shop different than other shops? We want our listeners to be able to hear this and think, oh, how do I set myself apart? How do I set my shop apart from the competitors in the area?
Well, I think the hangout part, Hyder Hangout, we encourage people to come in. I tell my employees, spend all the time you need to with a customer. There's some places you go in, and of course the big box, you go in, you can't find any help. We will spend up to an hour or two sometimes helping somebody find their fabric, figure out their measurements, whatever. And if it doesn't, in the short term, the plus and minuses as far as time doesn't equal, it still in the long term will. And we make friends rather than customers. We have Quilt to Your Wilt one day a month. We have classes. We have clubs. So I think that's, if I had to put it in one short little paragraph there, that's what sets us apart.
Sure. So it sounds like you've done a lot to try to build these relationships with your customers,
Right.
or you say friends, right?
Right.
That you've tried to create a space where they can feel safe to come, spend time, chat, explore more, right, as far as their quilting desires go.
And sewing, because we have I have alteration skills and dressmaking
Sure.
skills, and then I've got my sewing machine mechanic, and she is a dressmaker alterations, and she teaches the beginning sewing and teaches them how to make a vest or a apron or something like that. So it's
Okay.
the and more has grown too, because the whole name
Sure.
the whole name is Hyder Hangout Quilt Fabric and More, and we've
And more.
yeah.
Yeah, the and more has grown. I love that, and I think it's so fun because it adds some mystery to it, right? Like what else does Hyder Hangout have for me? Okay, so kind of going along that same line, tell us a little bit about how you have marketed that, right? Like how have you told people this is a place to come, the Hyder Hangout, right?
Right.
What are you using to
Lots.
get the word out there?
Well, I think the most effective one is the word of mouth.
Okay.
Of course, with the website, then I also have an Etsy store and an eBay store. I don't know, one of those may go away sooner than later. Then we have Facebook page, and we also do some Facebook Live. I'm teaching. For a while, I had a talk show on a radio station in town here. I think it was probably up to 2.5, 3 years, something like that. And one thing led to another, and he ended up closing his business. But he's a DJ and been a lifelong DJ. So we've been teaching DJ Rick how to quilt, and that's on live on Tuesday evenings on our Facebook. And so that's one way we've grown it, and we encourage people to watch it live, and then chime in with their comments or whatever. I've done some videos in the past. There was a TV station that I would go in once a week and do a quilting show. I haven't tried mail-outs, but I do coupons. So like hand out coupons at quilt shows. I'm involved in a quilt show at the quilt shop that is across the street from my shop, and have been involved with that almost the whole time I've been open for business.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Lots of
you're
ways.
using tons of mediums.
Yeah.
Tons of mediums,
Right.
I mean, all kinds of ways. Obviously, you kind of, hit on the very first thing. Word of mouth is like always going to be one of the most effective ways,
Right.
especially with a small business like yours, friends and friends of friends and cousins of friends and et cetera. And I think we all kind of know that, but maybe one of the more unexplored mediums that you referred to was TV advertising. Because that's not something I think a lot of quilt shops are doing right now. So tell us, I mean, how have you seen that benefit your business?
Well, it was a
tell us about that.
small, local, but I mean, the 6 counties in the area.
Sure.
And I actually have the recordings of some of them with the link on my website. So some of those videos are able to be watched still. TV advertising in like the bigger TV stations, like one of the big ones in Chattanooga. I haven't done that. Budget-wise, I just couldn't stretch my budget enough to feel like I could do that.
Sure, you wanted to stay more local, and by doing that, you're able to maybe keep a lower budget, right? Because you're staying in your local counties.
Right. If I went to the bigger Chattanooga station, which reaches North Georgia and North Carolina and stuff, it would be a big chunk of change. And that's probably also why I haven't bitten off doing a billboard yet, because those are kind of expensive too.
Sure. No, I totally understand that. But I think it's fun to kind of explore the thought of TV advertising, knowing that so many quilt shops are maybe not taking advantage of that. Today's episode is sponsored by Like So. Like So helps quilt and sewing stores manage all the pieces of their business. It's great for managing fractional yards and pre-cuts, tracking inventory in-store and online, and creating classes and events that live right on your website. Like So also has built-in tools for communicating with customers so you can keep them in the loop and coming back to your store. The Like So system integrates with some of the biggest names in the industry, like Moda, Checker, Michael Miller, and more to make your processes seamless and incredibly easy. Like So does all this and more. For listeners of this podcast, Like So is offering 50% off your startup costs. Click the link in the description or call 385-336-0698 to schedule a demo and redeem this offer. And now, back to the show. All right, so Susan, I think we're going to kind of maybe shift gears here a little bit from the advertising and marketing of your store to more of the general being a quilt retailer and some of the challenges that come with that. So what would you say, from your experience in the last, 10, 15 years, what's one of the most difficult parts of being a quilt retailer? What kind of challenges are you guys facing?
Okay, one of the biggest things I tell anybody that comes is, oh, it must be great to be paid to quilt. Well, you get paid to quilt, but you get paid to quilt for other people. You can't always do your own. You also, if you open a quilt shop, you are not opening a place to quilt and have fun. You are becoming a business owner.
Yes, and 100%.
I've seen lots of people who opened a quilt shop and within 5-10 years closed it. Within 100 miles of me, there's probably 20 that I know of, just thinking, if I just started thinking off the top.
Oh my gosh.
Some of it, some of those closings is COVID closed them, but some of them it was just the fact that they could never jump over to the idea, I'm a business owner first, a quilter second, which is anybody, any small business, and the people open a embroidery shop, a painting shop, a garden shop, and they have to, if they're going to be successful, jump over from, hey, it's a hobby to, hey, it's a business, and business decisions are different than what you would make if it was just a hobby.
That is such an important part of being a business owner, especially in the quilt and sewing space, is that it is sometimes really hard to separate that, especially when it is such a hobby and you view it as, in some ways, a hobby. And you have to step outside of that and say, okay, yes, I love to quilt, but also, this is a business and I need to make those decisions, that are best for the business and not best for kind of fueling my hobby, right? To your point, you're not being paid to quilt for yourself. You're being paid to quilt for other people, or, there's so many other aspects that come with owning a business, right? Taking care of your employees, managing your employees, inventory and, accounting. And I mean, as a small business owner, literally everything in a business is on your mind. And so it's not like you could just show up to work and, quilt and leave. Right? There's so much more on your mind. And so I totally understand that as being one of the biggest challenges that you're going to face. And so, no, I think that 100% answers that question.
If you can't multitask, forget being a business owner.
Sure. And
you have to be flexible, because I think the other thing that I have learned is trying to think about, well, there's certain ways to do things, but there's probably a better way, and listening to everybody you could possibly listen to in the industry, in other quilt shops, in customers, employees, spouses, all of that. You have to listen to everybody else and take all the ideas, but the buck stops here. I mean, you
Sure.
know, what if I don't do what I need to do, and if I don't put my foot down and say, no, we can't do that because, and most of the time, if I listen to other people's ideas and they say, well, you should do this, this, and this, and this, and I say, that's a good idea. However, here's, let's meld this together here. You're part of the idea of a way to put it on the shelf is great. Let's change it. Or so you have to be very, very flexible and open to everybody else's ideas.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think that's a big reason why we're doing this podcast is for other quilt shop owners to be able to listen, and we're going to have other owners on the podcast, is to be able to hear from you guys and hear what's working and what are you struggling with, because ultimately hearing from other people and learning from their experiences, their failures, and their successes is going to help us grow the most, I think, as quilt shop owners. Okay, so kind of moving forward here, and something that's really interesting for me is you got kind of started in maybe selling quilt and fabric in really kind of the boom of .com and e-commerce, right?
Right.
2007, eBay's getting really big, and Etsy kind of continues, years down the road from that. E-commerce. We've seen a lot of change in customer behavior in all industries, right?
Right.
Quilt is
Right.
not an exception to this. But then we saw, again, a big change in customer behavior when COVID happened,
Right. Oh,
I
my
mean,
goodness.
2020 was a weird year for all of us.
Right.
No matter what industry you were in, kind of regardless of that, it touched everyone. So tell me a little bit about how your customers' behavior, or I guess you prefer to friends, right? Your friends' behavior. How did that change in the last couple of years?
Well, I actually got a lot more customers too. Right at first, see, my husband's self-employed too, and he's got some e-commerce, and then he does recycling, and he started out recycling of electronics, but he's got actually an Etsy store that has, quote, art supplies on it, which
Oh, okay.
so I went home when they said, oh, we're going to close all the shops. Of course, everybody's going, oh, no, I'm going to die. You say,
Sure.
oh, no, my shop's going to die. How am I going to pay rent if I have to be closed? And,
For sure.
So we went home and we talked, and he said, well, hopefully the online sales will be great. And then we looked, and we thought, oh, curbside. So 2 days later, I look at my online sales, and they skyrocketed.
Oh my gosh.
Skyrocketed. I mean, I went from, a few a day to 20 to 50 a day.
Oh my goodness gracious.
I had to bring my husband in because, he knows how to package things. So he was
Sure.
packaging 4 hours a day. And then I have my best friend that was making masks. And so I don't remember how many a day she was making, but lots, because people were coming. I actually had to turn away one order for 500 masks. And then another one, this company said, well, we're just going to make 3 of the people that know how to sew make masks. Can you get us some kits? And I was able to procure elastic during that time because I wasn't doing the things like the big boxes were saying we need 20,000 yards at one order. I was doing,
Sure.
a couple rolls at a time.
Mhm.
And the curbside. So at first, it was a little difficult because everybody was just showing up, and I was like, no, we can't do that. And I was getting enough curbside orders that I was doing every 30-minute curbside orders from most days from 9 in the morning to 6 at night. And you couldn't come before your 30 minutes because between the last 30 minutes and the next one, I was putting the orders together and getting them ready for you to come. Sometimes I'd have a few ahead. I really loved when Like So put that where you could go online and say, hey, store pickup. When
Yeah.
when you guys changed that, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
and and um and you guys seem to do that where you listen to what you listen to the rumblings on the ground and do something proactively. And so I was able the April of 2020. My husband and I had one Sunday off, and
Oh
then
my
May we
gosh.
had 2 Sundays off. And I don't remember how many days a week my girl was making masks and coming in and helping get the orders. And then my sewing machine mechanic was people were getting sewing machines out of the closet. And so she was inundated that first year with sewing machine repairs and maintenance.
Yeah. Listening to you, what I'm hearing is you needed to adapt, right? The bottom line was you had to adapt to what your customers wanted, and you did, and you found huge success in it. And I think that speaks to, really successful business owners adapt when they see a change in the market, a change in behavior, or heaven forbid, something as drastic as the pandemic. You see an adaptation, and that's what you did, right? The curbside pickup, it blew up because that's what people needed and that's what people wanted.
Yeah.
And being able to provide that for them is ultimately, I think such a good sign of successful business owning, especially at kind of a small business level. Because we talk about big box stores and maybe not being able to adapt as quickly as small business owners are, right?
Right.
Like you are the decision maker. You didn't have to send it to a board for approval and get the shareholders' approval and all this kind of stuff. Like it was you. You get to say, yeah, this is what we're going to have to change, and your customers responded. It seems like from what I'm hearing, really positively to that.
Yeah, I know a few quilt shops that just closed. I don't want to do curbside pickup, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to do online. Yeah. So they either retired early or closed for an extended period of time, or you have to decide if you want to work that hard. And it's hard work when you have to adapt. And right now we've been going through a little downturn, big downturn. Sure. I don't know what. April and May was a lot slower than previous years. I haven't compared to way back, but and June is still being a little slow. We aren't having as many travelers as we normally do, and we know that's because gas is high. But the last week we've seen another small upturn on the purchasing online. So we gotta, you have to be able to be quick and adapt.
Yeah, well, let's explore that a little bit and talk about, we're in June of 2022, right, is when we're recording this podcast. So let's kind of explore that pattern of behavior. As we see, people are really wanting to get outside now, right? People are wanting to get out and do more because they've maybe felt like they weren't able to in the last couple of years.
Well, no classes, nobody coming in, and we did do a block of the month this year, and we ended up with 28 people on it. Of course, we can't fit all of them all at once in the classroom,
sure.
But so we have more people coming to things like that, and events, and there's gonna be a shop hop. We did have a shop hop last July, and we're going to have one this July. We're hoping more people. Not less, but who knows? We're hearing more people talking about carpooling rather than just going on the shop hop by themselves. So they may be adapting as far as, well, let's save gas by going together. But there is a little bit less travelers than I've noticed in the past.
Sure.
Last summer, there was a little bit more travelers. Of course, there was hardly any in 2020, there was, it was completely different. 2021, you had a little bit more travelers, and all this year, travelers have been more. There's an upswing on that. We hope it continues. We just don't know what gas getting higher and higher is going to do. I mean, sometimes you have to just get groceries and gas, and as my husband says, what's been happening the last 2 weeks is these people have been letting FedEx and USPS and UPS pay their gas instead of them coming in. So
Sure.
that's what's going on.
Yeah, no, I think that totally makes sense, and I think you touch on some more. Really talking about the adaptation piece of things is, I think people want to get out and do things, and they also want to be with people.
Right.
And you kind of spoke to that, right? You're talking about your classes and the block of the month, the shop hops, right? You're gonna do that with friends, and that's a big priority. Is people want to get out and do things, and they want to be with their friends and be with their family. And that's one way that it sounds like you guys are really adapting to that, is that maybe we don't have as many individual quilters saying, okay, I'm going to go to this store today by myself, buy, some jelly rolls and a piece of fabric, and go back to my house and I'm going to do my own quilt. Instead, I'm going to use quilting as a social event,
right,
to be able to be with my friends and be with my family. And I think classes are maybe one of the best ways to fuel that.
Right.
Is that kind of what you're seeing in your market?
Yeah, that and our events. We do have once a month. For a while, we did not have it. Was the Quilt to Your Wilt, bring in potluck food and come and hang out and sew. So
love it. Quilt to Your Wilt.
Sometimes sewing. Some people come in and just visit the whole time.
Yeah, and that's totally okay.
And we actually have had more people that are doing other things than quilting coming into the Quilt to Your Wilt, crochet or embroidery, and just sitting and visiting. So that's been kind of cool.
I love that. Okay, so Susan, we're kind of coming up on our time here. I think parting thoughts, what I want to hear from you is, if I'm a quilt shop owner and maybe I'm a new quilt shop owner, or I'm struggling in my quilt shop, give us a piece of advice. You would say the one thing that they really need to do in their business to take it to the next level.
Okay, one thing. Oh boy.
I know there's so many, because and I think we've tried to explore that over this podcast, is all the different things that you've done to adapt to a changing market and e-commerce and all these things. So
using all the information that's out there and the big community that's out there to get ideas, and not becoming so competitive with the quilt shop down the street or in the next county over.
Sure.
As your competition. There are quilt shops that won't talk to me, and that's not my choice. But there are quilt shop owners that think, well, I'm in competition with everybody in the world, and you have to get your niche, your own niche, because you can't compete with everybody in the world. I can't compete with some of the online sellers on Etsy, because they don't
Sure.
have the overhead I have. So I just put my stuff on there at a reasonable price. And, I do look and see what the market is bearing, but we pride ourselves with our relationships. So I don't know if that summarizes it up, but you have to be open to all the ideas that are out there, and making friendships with other quilt shop owners and vendors and suppliers and your fabric reps and whoever else you can, other business owners that are not even in your industry. I've learned a tremendous part. I'm in the chamber, and then I'm in Main Street Cleveland, and I'm also in a power lunch group, and I listen to their struggles and what they do and apply it to my shop in its own way. So
I love that. I think from what I'm hearing from you is, use your community,
right,
and be a part of your community to build that niche, right?
Right.
To in your case, the Hyderhangout is to let people know this is a hangout, right? This is a place to come and enjoy time with your friends and with us. And so I just want to say huge thank you, Susan. Thanks to you for being on.
All right.
Again, from Cleveland, Tennessee, right? Not Cleveland, Ohio.
Well, there's also a Cleveland, Georgia. There's probably a Cleveland in almost
Georgia?
every state, but.
Well, there you go. This one's Cleveland, Tennessee.
Right.
And it has been just an absolute pleasure to be able to chat with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you for listening to The Quilt Shop. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a rating or review to let us know what you think. For more interviews with business owners, visit likeso.com/interviews, where you'll find transcripts, show notes, and videos for all our episodes.